Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. In this episode, we're going to take a look at a piece by the digital illustrator known as Morgan Sorensen. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about layered minimalism. We're going to talk about the archaic symbolism of the skull. Then we're also going to talk about the way we honor our dead after they've passed. Let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work, you're likely going to be caught by this really striking dark on light contrast. Of course, this kind of white background is exactly the perfect neutral atmosphere to allow the kind of darker elements within the spatial composition to accent themselves to the highest degree possible. And so, you see that there, of course, a dark on light contrast really emphasizes and really catches your eye with absolute ease. We see a really kind of gritty and kind of dusty texturing throughout the spatial composition. It introduces us to that really dark aesthetic alongside, of course, the dual colors of the white and the black here. So that gritty aesthetic and that darker color is a pretty striking introduction here. And so we see, four individual subjects are holding up what appears to be a coffin towards the sky. And so the title of this work is, quote, "We carry our dead with us." And so you can see here, of course, they are carrying a casket towards the sky, elevating it above themselves. And each one almost feels like a pillar which is holding up the support or the foundation of this casket here. And we see their placement is, so if we were to draw like a center, oh, I guess it doesn't want to draw. There we go. So we see, wow, that's being glitchy. Okay, there we go. So we see, they're split on either side here. 1, 2, 1, 2, and then it cuts that straight in half. Of course, the texturing isn't perfectly symmetrical, but what you'll see here is at the very least, the placement is quite symmetrical. So that's important to note. The symmetry of placement within this work, it gives a very balanced visual experience, a very harmonious visual experience for the viewer as well. Of course, it balances the spatial composition and gives you a very kind of ordered sense here, and it's a really, really interesting one at that. And so we also see there's almost this kind of minimally defined form. It's a really iconic style, and I think that Morgan Sorensen, also known as Theme Machine, will become, come to known by this style quite easily. And so what I mean by this is, these aren't very detailed subject. There's just enough to define the form of our subjects to show us what they are. And so we see that here, and even up here, these are kind of like minimal geometric shapes, but they're layered on top of one another quite intricately. And so that almost feels, at least in this specific area, some type of like ornate layering. And it really introduces us to this kind of funerary ceremony that we're looking at here. And it almost, it feels like we're being immersed within the scene, and we're seeing some type of ornate geometry on that casket there. And that is quite important because we of course honor our dead in so many different ways, and art is one of those many different ways. So of course we see people decorate graves, we see people decorate caskets, everything in between there. And so we see, these four subjects are skeletons, and what's really iconic is that skull. So four individual skulls for each subject here, or each secondary subject, I would say, holding up our main subject as the casket. And so, because it is elevated above their head, there is that sense of importance. And so the skull is a really archaic symbol of mortality and, of course, death. And so it's kind of a reminder as well as a symbol of death in and of itself. And so we see, of course, since this piece is about the passing of life and the kind of finite elements of mortality, but it's more so about the way we honor our dead. And so you see them elevating the casket above them. And so the kind of archaic symbol of mortality, they have their direction of attention, each one is facing downwards. So that could symbolize this sense of grief within the work. They are looking down, but they're elevating the dead above themselves. So maybe they're elevating the legacy of that person, they are remembering that person. There's a bunch of different ways you could really look at that. And so we see they're kind of bowing their heads in grief, and that is quite fitting because their grief is a process, and of course the funerary ceremony is one of the most important ones of that, to kind of let go and to let the dead rest and to let them pass on and to remember their legacy. And so we see so many different examples of the way we honor our ancestors. We see in different ways. For example, of course you have the literal funeral, the ceremony, the funerary ceremony, but you also have the fact that we kind of take pilgrimage to the graves even after we buried our dead. So there's kind of those three main things there. There's the funeral ceremony there. There's the fact that we bury them, and then there's also the fact that we even return to that burial site as well. So those three distinct things are quite important, and there's kind of this sense of pilgrimage to the grave. After we've buried them, they go and we give offerings, we give love, we give libation. We bring flowers. So many different things to kind of honor and remember our dead after they passed. So that's really, really important, and we see that here. We carry our dead with us. We carry that legacy. We carry their spirit, their story, and their soul as a result. So I thought this was really, really cool piece. Very stylistic, very minimalist, but also a very kind of occultic, a very dark piece, but also very important to teach on kind of the way we honor our ancestors. So now I want to take a quick look at Morgan Sorensen's profile, see what we can learn, see what we can draw from her stylistic profile. All right, so taking a look at Morgan Sorensen's public Instagram profile, we see, they note illustration, design, and branding. There are those main ones. Based out of Idaho, so it is an American artist. Commissions are closed and emails only. You can also purchase prints at the website there at the bottom. Yeah, so a lot of different things coming from this artist. There's almost this kind of, Sisyphus. So yeah, there is that very kind of ancient symbolism that the artist draws in. Some very, very interesting work coming from this artist. Like I said, a lot of scenes utilize that sense of minimalism, but it also has those kind of archaic or ancient symbols that really come back in full force. So there's also a lot of kind of that dual black and white color palette that we explored today, but there's also some explorations of the gold, some explorations of the red as well. A lot of prints available here. So if any of you guys like these pieces, go check out the original artists. You can support them directly and really allow the artist to continue to hopefully make a living and create some of this really good art that we know and love. So we see another thing I notice here, of course, we see that minimalism, we see those kind of ancient archaic symbolism. The third thing I noticed was that kind of black and white color palette. The fourth and final thing I'm noticing here is kind of that sense of order or that sense of symmetry here. And so, of course, we see that sense of almost radial symmetry there. We see that sense of pretty much perfect symmetry there. And, there is that sense of balance throughout a lot of this artist's works. And so those four distinct things is I'm really noticing, and some really intriguing work coming from this artist. I think I'm going to showcase some more of this person's art, look a bit deeper and find some of those, see like animal sacrifice here. That would be a very perfect piece to showcase somewhere where we haven't gone before, somewhere where we can learn a bit more about what we haven't discovered yet here at the Apollo Art Exchange. So just some incredible piece coming from this artist. You guys enjoyed looking a bit deeper at this artist's stylistic profile. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed. We talked a little bit about layered minimalism. We talked about the archaic symbolism of the skull, and then we also talked about the way we honor our dead after they passed. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.